Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jenny Park, and today we're continuing on our series of Mohae with Jenny Park, celebrating Asian American Pacific Islander Month. Today we have a super special guest, someone who I think I've had like a crush on for like over 7 years, Jezz Chung. She is a writer, a speaker, a facilitator, really in the diversity, inclusion, and equity space. Their mission statement is to build equity through conscious creativity. They are such a creative person, and especially in such turbulent times that we've been in, you've probably seen a lot of Jezz's work. She's created a lot of tools and resources and posts that have helped facilitate a lot of conversations for people. So grateful for Jezz's voice and expertise in this time. Jezz has also been featured on the cover of Adweek, Ad Color to Washington Post, New York Times, Paper Mag. They share so much advice, which I'm really excited to dive into. So thank you again for watching and listening. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and let's dive into the conversation. Hi, Jezz. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jenny, for having me.
One of my memories of you is that you, even from that time of like undergrad and early 20s, you were pretty passionate and vocal about speaking up for the AAPI community, or the APA community, API community. Where do you think that came from? And I know you also had a lot of really great mentorship relationships with like Tiffany Warren and whatnot. What did you learn from that?
This is actually, Jenny, this is like helping me reflect on myself. I always say like we're mirrors for each other, you know? And I'm like, wow, that's really cool that you saw me that way, because I think I have so much insecurity around just finding my voice late, you know, as if there is such a thing, because I didn't grow up in a household where I was taught how to speak up for myself. I was taught to really just go with what everyone else is doing and just not make noise. So it took me a while to find that. And I think that me speaking up for Asian Americans and Asian American identity probably came from, I think it came from me finding my own Asian American identity and claiming that for myself around the same time. And I think from there, I tend to work in kind of extremes. Like once I'm in something, I'm like, all in.
You're all in.
Yeah. So I think from there, it just kind of went like, all right, I want to make up for lost time. All the years I spent being ashamed of who I was, all the years I said some really problematic things like about Asians, you know, because I was just regurgitating what I had learned from growing up in the South. And yeah, so I think it was just me trying to make up for that time, and then really kind of like trying to find my voice through practice, because that is really how we find our voice, right? Just like trial and error and practice. It's not something that just comes to us at once.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's cool that that's reflective for you, because I think the reason why that also made such a impression on me is because I went to University of Illinois, which also has a pretty strong advertising program. They have the largest like AAF chapter, but I didn't go to U of I for advertising. I like stumbled into it. I didn't even know what advertising was until I was there. And so I think I just had a lot of insecurity of, I don't know anything about this industry. I can't find my place in this like environment. And I was fortunate that there were programs like MAPE and MPMS that I could put my foot in the door. But I think I still was unsure about how I felt about being in these these programs for uplifting diverse voices. Like I felt like even unqualified to be in it, and to see another Asian college student like yourself at that time to speak out and kind of own these things that I was wrestling with internally that I wasn't telling anyone. I think that's why it left such an impression on me at that time. And
wow. And those programs taught us that we can be the difference. That I think, you know, we're socialized to think like we should be grateful for any opportunity and we're the lucky ones. No, these companies are lucky to have us and have our contributions and our voice and our perspective, because it's needed. And I think you're touching up on something else, in that I think for a long time when people said diversity, they weren't thinking about Asians. Like we weren't really included in much of the narrative. And it's really only been very recently that people have been realizing, oh no, people of color means all Asian Americans too, and really making sure that we're included in that, and thinking about, diversity, inclusion, equity.
And you were pretty involved in those networks like Ad Color and whatnot. And you had a lot of like mentorship relationships. Like what were some things you learned from your experiences in those communities and programs?
Those programs taught me that I can enter the industry as me, that I don't have to water myself down or change who I was, because at the time, I had pink and purple hair. I wore like a bunch of like I went through a polka dot phase. So I was wearing just all polka dots and a bunch of vintage clothes that I like made and sewed myself. Again, like very expressive. And I thought, oh, is this professional? Do I have to change myself in order to fit in, to be seen as valid in these professional corporate spaces? And those programs taught me that no, I can. Again, like they need me to show up as me. So it gave me that confidence for sure that I felt like I was lacking for a lot of my life. I feel like in terms of that kind of confidence in my ability to do something, and the mentorships like Tiffany R. Warren, who founded and created Ad Color and who's on the board of so many organizations. I think she always taught me to just do it even if you're not ready, like to just step up and really step into, I talk a lot about stepping into your bigness. And
I love step into your bigness. I think what's really powerful about that, because I think in that, especially when we're early in our career, you start to pick up the cues of what is appropriate and what will make someone successful in a certain work environment. And I think you use the word professional as I think what comes up, but that you were affirmed early on that who you were didn't have to change and conform, but that you could be yourself, and that wouldn't be a liability, but that would actually be your superpower.
Exactly. And I've always, I think, been in touch with how I feel about something. So if I'm in a space and everyone's trying to fit into the mold, I get like a feeling inside where it's just something stirring inside me and it says, no, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. So I think I always kind of listen to that and say, all right, what doesn't feel good and what can I bring into this space to make it a little bit more real and authentic?
Okay, so after college, you worked at TBWA working on Apple, which is obviously one of the most iconic brands. That's an incredible gig. What was that like for you when you were first coming out of college, and what was like the coolest thing you worked on?
Yeah. It was definitely a great first job out of college. It also taught me about burnout real early in my career, because I was working like over 100 hours, almost about an average of 100 hours for my first year there. So the beginning of my career, I just kind of like went in real hot, and I learned a lot and got to work with some incredible people, met my best friends there to this day. I think it taught me a lot about detail too, attention to detail, and what it's like to work with a team to put something out into the world that, has a lot of impact, for millions of people to see. So I think I learned early on like responsibility too, because there was just a sense of like, we had to look over everything and like QA it a million times, 1,000 times, because there would be so many eyeballs on it. And I really kind of like wore that responsibility, like sometimes to a not healthy degree.
Did you feel like when you were working 100 hours a week, like in that time of your life, did you like that? Or were you also sensing like this is not sustainable?
I felt like I had no plan B, in that if I'm not successful here, I don't have, funds. I don't have, funds to do something else. I have, just spent all these years of college doing all these, extracurriculars and really like pushing myself to try to get a good job. I'm here now. And I felt this also great sense of like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm working on Apple, my first job out of college. I can't mess this up. Yeah.
After that, you went to Anomaly in New York, which I'm really excited to hear about, because you carved like a whole new role for yourself. But what prompted you to leave LA and go to New York?
Yeah. I mean, I went into a deep depression. I went into just a lot of dark thoughts and a lot of just heavy energy. And I lost my confidence in my ability to write too. It just kind of really stifled my confidence and my creativity. And I thought, I'm just not a good creative. Like I'm not cut out for this. I wasn't doing well at the agency anymore. And I thought, okay, my career is like at a standstill. I need to change something. And I really loved my life in LA. Like otherwise, I love like I built a lot of really beautiful friendships and kind of got involved in different communities. And it was really hard for me to leave, but something, again, like going back to the feeling, something in me just said, you need to leave and try something else. And I'd always wanted to live in New York. So I got a job at Anomaly, actually through Ad Color, because again, Tiffany R. Warren kind of named me Miss Ad Color in 2017, and that gave me a lot of visibility and helped me get the job at Anomaly.
That's amazing. Well, one, I think that's really, I do remember that seeing you in Ad Color and Miss Ad Color, and I think that's incredible that you had someone like Tiffany who was continuing to put you in places and push that and see something in you. But I also really appreciate you sharing that, because I think you want to feel like you're making it and you're being successful. But I think mental health and taking care of yourself is so important. So I appreciate that you're even like sharing that honestly, even if on the outside you were still getting all these incredible opportunities. What did healing look like for you? And I'm so glad that you recognize that and put yourself in a healthier place.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, there's the illusion of it all. You know, there's such a big difference between what people see and what people are sharing online, and then what's really happening. And it was, I think a lot of it also was just me trying to survive. Like what is the next step I have to take to survive? And that's actually what led to me pitching that role in diversity, equity, inclusion work, because I wasn't sustaining myself as a copywriter, in that I was, again, like working really late. I would be the last one in the office so many times because of my ADHD. I wouldn't be able to start working until everyone left the office because of the noise and the distractions and the people. So, and especially for writing, I kind of need that like silence and stillness to write. And now I know I need a lot of space to think. My friend Eileen recommended this book to me called Designing Your Life, and it's by these two Stanford professors, all about applying design principles to your lifestyle. At the same time, also I was studying manifestation for the first time, or looking up, being introduced to that idea, which is really just believing in yourself enough to say that you want something, and then that belief helps propel you into action to take steps towards it, is how I thought about it. So I thought, all right, how can I not just create a new job, but how can I create a new life for myself? I thought about, all right, Jez, what are your gifts? What are the things what's your magic? What are the things that are, that make you feel the most alive? And I thought, I really love speaking in front of audiences. I really love sharing my stories and helping people find their own stories and their own voice. I love helping guide people back home to themselves. I also love writing, and I love creating, and I love anything that helps build equity, but through the lens of creativity, through art. And I didn't see a lot of people doing that around me. So I wrote it down, and then I put that into a deck, and then I pitched that to the head of HR, and then they
wait. I want to talk more about this, because I was so excited. So you went through this whole process of just your life, of what you're passionate about. You articulated, identified it. You created into a deck for work, and you're a copywriter at Anomaly. That's what you were hired for. That's your day job. Then you set up a meeting, and you said, "This is what I think we need here." Yeah. What was in the deck? Like, what were you proposing to Anomaly?
For anyone watching because I've gotten this question a lot, in how do I make that transition? How do I make that pivot into DE&I work? The best advice I talked to Goddess Rivera, who's now at Twitter, because what she did at her agency she worked at before Twitter was she did the same thing. She pitched her role. And I learned about that through this Cannes Lion program that HP and Facebook did and MAPE did. So I went to the Cannes Lions Festival, and I saw Goddess give a presentation on, how I made this role. And I thought, oh, that's possible. Like, wow, people can do that. And then, so I reached out to her, and she was so generous with just giving me advice on, like, all right, you can approach it like this and this. And I talked to Tiffany R. Warren, and I talked to Keisha John Baptiste, who's now at Hearst. And these are all connections through Ad Color, right? And I asked them, like, all right, I'm thinking about doing this. How can I approach it so that I'm actually effective, right? Because it's one thing to be passionate and just say like, I want to do this, but then and it's still a business move for them. So they have to understand like, why are you worth the investment? What are we investing in? So what they helped me think about was, what do they need? And what is the need that I can fill? So I positioned it as, this is what's happening right now in the industry. These are kind of the trends. This is what's needed at this agency. And here's why I'm equipped to fill this role. And here's what I could do with it. And I kind of broke it down into, what I could focus on. And I made it as clear as I could. And I think that helped them to really see it, because a lot of it is, and I mean, in advertising too, you have to like mock up campaigns for a client to buy off on it. So it was almost like I mocked up this role. Here's what I would be doing on a day-to-day. Are you on board? Is this something that you're able to invest in and work with me with? So
that is so impressive. Wait, did they say yes on the spot and they funded it, or was it a process?
It was a process. I almost left the agency because I was so burnt out and I thought, like, maybe again, I'm thinking like, maybe I'm just not cut out to be a copywriter, or maybe I'm not cut out to be in advertising. So I almost left, and I expressed that to her. I said, like, I'm thinking about leaving. Like, this is not my body cannot take this anymore. And she said, well, what would you want to do instead? Is there something else? So that helped me get that meeting. And then in that meeting with the head of HR at the time, people and culture, she then took that deck and then shared it with the CEO and then kind of the board of directors. And then they came back to me with like kind of an adjusted role description and what that entails.
How did you prepare for this meeting? Did you practice it a ton?
I just did a lot of affirming for myself, which is something I've done, I think, a lot over the past couple of years, just self-affirming to change that kind of subconscious mind that tells me you're not worthy, you're not enough, you're not smart enough for this, you're not qualified enough for this. So I did a lot of just kind of, I'd started a meditation practice kind of a little bit before then too. So I did a lot of meditating, a lot of just embodiment work.
I really love how you also articulated what manifestation is. I think I was personally always thought manifestation was a little bit too woo-woo for me. And then I started meeting with these like my friends more intentionally. And I started seeing a life coach and just really learning about like vision casting for yourself. And exactly what you said, it's articulating what like the things that you want and kind of believing yourself enough to say it out loud and really it becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it sounds like you're almost doing that in smaller batches too, for like mini milestones of believing in yourself and affirming yourself. So I think that's so powerful. That's amazing.
We can't see it if we don't believe it, or we can't create it if we don't dream it. It's really, a practice of envisioning, of thinking about what is it that's most aligned with me, and then how can I move towards it? Because we can't move towards something if we have no idea what we're doing. It's really a practice of designing your future.
I love that so much. Mm-hmm. So tell me what you're doing now. So I know you also have a mission statement. And I think it is kind of what you're related to driving when you're doing Design Your Life. And it's something like creating equity through creativity or something. Can you tell us what your life looks like now?
I want sustained success, and I want success on my terms. I don't want success in, white supremacist, heteropatriarchal terms. I want success in terms of, in terms of liberation, in terms of what am I doing to contribute to the movement for liberation, to the movement for equity, and not just diversity and inclusion, because diversity and inclusion without equity is nothing. I really want to think about long term. So I thought, all right, I kind of mapped out my life and what are the things that are common threads and where do I want to go? And I came up with building equity through conscious creative expression. There's a phrase that's a theory in the North Star. And I always think about how can I put that into action every single day? And the things that I take on now speaking engagements, workshops, I always think about, is it aligned with that mission? Is it aligned with that goal? And also I'm working on my first book is something that I'm going to be really heavily working on for the next few months.
What is your book about?
It's a guide for young people of color to navigate the isms and inequities of building a career. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, sign me up. I want to read that now. So I want to talk a little bit also about like your personal identity. I know we're both Korean American, and you mentioned you grew up in Georgia where you weren't surrounded by a lot of Asians, but you've done a lot of active unlearning, learning, and really been able to share some of that with the other people in your community. What is something that you are embracing about your Asian or Korean specific identity, or something that you're actively unlearning?
Something I'm embracing, I think, especially lately, is just a reverence for tradition and rituals and ancestry. And I didn't realize, I didn't, put a name to that when I was younger, but just in the ways that even we speak to each other, or in Korean language, there's the 존댓말, like the yo on top of everything. It's not just 안녕, it's 안녕하세요. So, which, it's not like 100% great because there's a lot of like hierarchy to that too. But there's like, a lot of, I think, kind of working on my like personal development, self-development, mental health, etc., has taught me to embrace the multitudes of something, right? The both and. So I acknowledge that there is a lot of kind of problematic thinking in being so hierarchical. And I also understand that there's a lot of reverence in that and a lot of honor. Like, I have kind of listed somewhere, like maybe on my vision board or something, like honor your heritage. That's something that I really want to do, because especially with, the wellness industry now taking so many influences from Eastern culture, I want to honor that in my own way, because as I'm kind of, talking more and more about wellness and everything, and I want to make sure that I'm honoring the people that came from, because I see so much of it just not being honored. Something that I'm unlearning is the fact that I have to please everyone. My job is to please.
I feel that.
Right? I feel like this is also among a lot of my like Black and brown friends too. But really among Asians, it's so prevalent. This idea that it's my job to make sure that you're happy. It's my job to make sure that, I'm doing everything in my power to make this easy for you, without just forgetting my needs. And so I've been slowly unlearning that over the past few years, especially.
That's such a good one. I also think that's one where there's multitudes, where there's good and bad, what I love about like Asian culture, this idea of like communal mindset, and that you want to care for the common group, and that you all want to be serving one another and considering one another, which I think is really kind. But it does come at expense sometimes, where that need comes above your own need, and this fear of not being able to take care of yourself first. And that's something I want to unlearn too. I really like that.
Yeah. We learn from a lot of activists, like self-care is communal care. Communal care is self-care. Like it's a cycle. When we take care of ourselves, we can show up for our communities. When we show up for our communities, that's a way of showing up for ourselves too, because it's that we do have that responsibility, and it's a sacred responsibility to be able to protect our elders, to protect people who are undocumented, to protect, we're talking about protecting sex workers now, and like making sure the people who are the least protected, most historically harmed, we're looking out for them, because then that helps uplift everybody. Looking out for queer and trans folks, disabled folks, like all of these things that we're not really taught to look out for, because they may not directly impact us. But when we make sure that we're including them in the conversation, not only that, but we're really protecting, amplifying, uplifting, that helps everyone.
I love that. My last question for you, Jezz. I know you talk a lot about future self. What's on your vision board?
Speaking of really claiming my bigness, stepping into my bigness, over the past few years, I've really understood that I'm a performer. I cannot deny this about myself. I come alive in front of a microphone, in front of an audience. I feel it in my bones that it's something that I'm meant to do, to tell stories with my whole being through my
Mm.
voice, through my body.
Are you gonna
Calling in.
show us?
This is my vision board that I made earlier this year. And so it has a lot of like, I put numbers there too, like 27 million. I'm trying to go big. I'm trying to create equity for myself and future generations. Netflix release date,
Woo!
opening premiere, Emmy Award nominee, and also about like softness and tenderness. I think with more kind of visibility and with that pressure of yeah, maybe having a show or something, I think it's really easy to lose that softness and like lose that center. So I put like, you're feeling soft, breathable, feel earth call to me. I want to stay grounded, honoring our culture. Um, Lots of plot twists because I'm embracing, all the changes that are ahead, all the transformations,
I'm obsessed.
making equality real. Another vision board of my guiding stars, as I call them. So these are all, people that I look to as, all right, when I'm thinking like what direction I want to move in, who are the people I want to honor, who are the people who have kind of paved this way so that I can, do what I do. So it has, Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs, Maxine Hong Kingston, author, authors and activists, and Angela Davis, Toni Morrison, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Maya Angelou,
Oh my
and
god.
also has like Rina Sawayama and Joy Crooks and Ravina, um, because and Greta Lee, so like a lot of Asian performers. Because I just didn't see a lot of that growing up, and that's I think a lot of reason why I just didn't think I could do it. But yeah, so I look at this when I want to think about, is it possible? Like, can I do it? What energy do I need? Do I want to call on to help, equip me to show up for all that's ahead? And this is what I look at.
That's incredible. Well, one, I feel kind of affirmed because I did a vision board for the first time ever this year. And I did similar where I made two, where one was like, this is what I want my life to look like. And then it was a little bit different take on people. It was like, who are the people that I kind of want to take pieces of, like characteristics of, like an embrace and kind of like help guide the kind of person I want to be. But I also love the idea of like, who are people who have come before me that I can channel their energy, that they've done it. I'm obsessed, Jazz. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, no, I'm glad it can be helpful.
Thank you so much, Jazz. I feel really lucky to have gotten to chat with you and that we get to share this. So thanks so much for doing this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me, Jenny.